Oregon won the Big Ten title game this weekend.
Hey!
How about that? 13-0. Credit to Jason Swigart. He called it.
He nailed it on the head. 13-0, undefeated season.
Yeah, the only thing I missed was they're the 1 seed, not the 2 seed.
It really would have liked being the 2 seed in this bracket, but, I digress.
Well, we talked a lot about that in the first hour of the program, the college football playoff bracket and who ended up getting a good path and who got screwed. If you missed it, you can always check out the podcast at 1080thefan.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Oregon got screwed, and the team they beat in the Big Ten title game, Penn State, kind of got rewarded.
Yeah, nice little pathway for them there at number 6.
Very interesting game, this one, because Oregon got out to an 18-point lead.
They did after the pick, 28-10.
And you kind of thought, okay, this is going to go sideways. And immediately, Penn State went on this little burst, and then Oregon responded. Tez Johnson was unstoppable in this game.
Yeah.
11 catches, 181 yards. He had a 16.5 average. I actually thought it was going to be higher than that when I looked at the average. He ended up with a touchdown. Kenyon Sadiq had 2 touchdowns in this game. That was incredible.
Nice little breakout game for baby Brock Bowers.
Been
waiting all year for him.
I thought the play when he scored and he leaped over the Penn State player, I thought that kind of symbolized Oregon's year 1 in the Big Ten.
We're just going to jump right over you. You think you're going to tackle us? Not going to happen. Sorry. This is, by the way, a sophomore tight end.
Yes, a lot to build on for the future of that because Terrence Ferguson is going to go to the NFL.
Yep.
He had 3 catches for 30 yards.
A couple of big ones for him.
Interesting game in the sense of Oregon's offense was unstoppable. Dylan Gabriel had 4 touchdowns. He was 22 of 32 for 283. But it was the other side that kind of left me going, oh, because Penn State's offense, after a slow start, they kind of got it going a little bit.
Yeah.
And had it not been for 2 picks by Drew Aller, you do wonder if this game would have been different, but I kind of think that sums up Drew Aller. Interesting game, but the Ducks win the Big Ten title game in year 1 in the conference.
It's hilarious. 2 different things. If you told me on Friday, the reaction that I would have given you, if you would have told me on Friday that Penn State is going to score 37 points on Oregon's defense, I would have looked at you horrified and said, what? Oregon's going to lose the game? I didn't see that coming. And vice versa, if you would have told me that Oregon was going to score 45, I would have looked at you and said, damn, they're going to blow them out. That's going to be the game, huh? I did some interviews last week. We talked about it ad nauseum, previewed the game. I saw a low-scoring defensive slugfest in every way that I saw that game playing out. I made a bunch of different score predictions on interviews, 24-20, 28-21, 24-17. Like, that was the kind of game that I envisioned in my mind.
You did see a 1-score game in your mind.
I saw a 1-score game. I thought Oregon would win. I thought they'd cover, but I didn't see it being a blowout or a big separation. I had a lot of faith in both defenses. You look at the numbers on the season and what they've both accomplished. You look at the way that they've played in big games throughout the course of the year. I had a lot of trust and confidence in both defenses, and right out of the gate, Oregon came out and just ran it down Penn State's throat. They didn't have any answer, and then Sadiq hurdles the guy, and you're like, all right, that was pretty easy to score. Penn State responds. Now, they had to settle for a field goal on their opening drive, but it just seemingly, unless one team was turning the football over, which Penn State did in a couple of big moments, they moved the ball with ease, and it was really bad defense. It was open receivers. Give a credit to both offensive coordinators. I thought they both called brilliant games and schemed their guys open. But the big takeaway was, I think there's one negative and one positive. The negative is, oh, God, what was that defensively, and is that the way you're going to look the rest of the year? Because that wasn't pretty, and they had a lot of communication breakdowns and wide-open receivers, and paid a lot of attention to Tyler Warren, which left other guys wide open in certain spots, and so that ended up absolutely killing them.
Katron Allen was a monster in this
they
game.
had no answer. I mean, he just ran all over them and caught the ball every time they threw it to him as well.
Yeah.
The other takeaway, though, that I had was it was really nice to see that from Oregon's offense. This is a group that at times this year has been a little clunky, at times hasn't quite clicked. They've had their moments where they've been good, and then they kind of go into a lull. Penn State has an elite defense. They have NFL guys at every level. And Oregon moving the ball and scoring 45 points on them and Dylan Gabriel being in complete control was a very nice, pleasant surprise, and it reaffirmed my stance that there's not a quarterback in the country that I'd rather have leading my team in a big game than that guy.
How much of the controlled environment do you think impacts and helps the offenses there? Playing in a dome, no weather, inclement stuff. Like, if I would have told you this, you mentioned the score, 37, you would have been like, okay, what if I say, Dirt, Penn State's going to score 37, they're going to have 523 total yards, which is more than Oregon's going to have, And
Yeah.
they're going to outrush Oregon by 111 yards.
Say there's no chance you're going to get
Would you
blown
have said
out.
Oregon lost that
Yes,
game?
not a doubt in my mind that Oregon's going to lose that game.
And that's the crazy part about it is
Yes.
Penn State still coming up a little short, and again, largely because Aller threw multiple interceptions.
Yeah, he handed him a touchdown that was essentially a pick six, and then for whatever reason on the last drive of the game decided to chuck one up on 1st and 10. Still don't understand why he threw that ball.
I don't either.
They're moving it.
Franklin
You're down by
had
8.
the same reaction I had of like, why?
Why would you throw it? You're moving it with ease all day on
Just
Oregon's
methodically
defense.
move down the
Yes.
field. Use Warren, use Allen. We don't need
Let's
a
just chuck one
heave-ho
up.
here. And I didn't really understand that thinking at all.
Yeah.
Again, I think it kind of sums up his tenure at Penn State. But winning the Big Ten in year one, I want to get to some Dan Lanning audio here. Just going into that conference, somehow, and we didn't have it here. I don't think anybody on the station or in the market had it. But somehow this narrative formed of, is Oregon ready for the Big Ten? What?
Can you handle it? Can you handle the physicality?
Watch this conference that we used to have out here. We were better than you guys. You just had 2 good teams.
The Pac-12 got 2 first-round buys in the college football playoff,
How
man.
about that?
Arizona State and Oregon represent, baby.
God, there's 3 Pac-12 teams in there: Oregon, ASU, and Boise State.
Yes, there are. And
Represent,
Oregon State
bitch.
won a conference championship, too.
You're
That's
damn
4
right.
conference championships. What are we
suck
doing?
on that one, college football?
West Coast football, baby.
But I just kind of laughed at that narrative, and not that it was like a real narrative. We had the Penn State guy on, Steve Jones. He was delightful. And he said he had heard that, and he was like, do you watch football? And I appreciated that, because that's a guy that does watch football. But to go 13-0, to win the Big Ten title game in year one, Dan Lanning certainly thought his team was talented enough to do that. There's no doubt about it. But to go do it, I thought you saw the emotions of Dan Lanning in the postgame of just, we actually did do it. We proved everybody wrong. We went through it. We were more physical. We outgunned them. And any style of game that you wanted to play,
we could find a way to win.
Oregon found ways to win. Wisconsin, you're going to drag us down in the cold. Our offense is going to suck. Doesn't matter. Our defense will win the game. Ohio State, you get in a little bit of a shootout. You've got horses. We've got horses. We're going to be smarter than you.
Yeah.
Boise State, special teams.
Yeah.
Boise
Kick
State,
return
special
and a
teams.
punt return.
Penn State, your offense is going to hum at a level it hasn't hummed all year. Cool. We'll hum just enough where we know we can make the big play when we need to. Every style of game Oregon needed to win in, they won in.
Yeah, it was. The symbolism of it was pretty fun to see, and what it meant for them in that group, especially the guys that were there last year that had to go through heartbreaking losses and being so close twice to Washington and so close to going to a college football playoff, and a team that would have been in a 12-team field, right? It's just funny the way you look at how different the sport is right now and how different maybe the end of the season feeling is. For Penn State, as an example, they can't win these big games. I think the numbers now for James Franklin is he's lost like 15 of his last 16 against top 5 or top 10 teams. They continuously lose these games. He's out there blaming the officials afterwards, saying we didn't get enough holding calls or whatever. I think the penalty count was like Oregon's 4, Penn State 6. So complain about it all you want. It is funny how different the reaction is for the losing side of it compared to where you were last year as an Oregon fan. But I think these guys, they use that motivation. They use that fuel all off season. I remember talking about this in August, and we had random listeners who were fans of Big Ten teams. Not all of them bought into it, but I remember one listener in particular chiming in August of like, this idea Oregon's just going to steamroll into the Big Ten is ridiculous. Get out of here. And it's like, I remember responding, talk to me in December. Let's see where we're at on this one.
Yeah.
Because there's been this idea that the Big Ten is a difficult conference and how can you handle it? They're so big. They're so physical. I guess if you're USC, Washington, and UCLA, it's going to be a tough road for you. But for Oregon, that was never a reality. And I think you can argue right now, considering what's going on at Ohio State, now all of this could change. Maybe Ohio State wins a national championship for all I know. Maybe they beat Oregon in a semifinal game for all I know. But based on the information we have right now, they are their premier team in the Big Ten, and they are the team with the brightest future in the Big Ten. I don't know where Ryan Day is going to go. If they lose at home to Tennessee, does he get fired? What does that do to their roster? Where do they go higher?
I'd be more scared of Michigan, to be honest with you. They seem to be funded really well for the NIL stuff.
Bryce Underwood coming in. It's
Bryce
a big deal.
Underwood. They just beat Ohio State with an undermanned, undergunned team. Like
they have their number in that rivalry game. I just
circling Michigan a little more.
13-0. The way they're recruiting, the reality is, no matter how this season ends, they are the premier brand already in that that conference 1 year in, and it's really cool. They showed up at media days. They had a cocky swagger to them.
Mighty different.
They had a mighty different big inflatable duck in the river, and everybody said, boy, oh boy, you better back this up. And then they struggled with Idaho and Boise right out of the gate, and everybody made their jokes, and now you look up and they're 13-0, and they're the number one team in the country.
Well, even Duck fan was panicking at that point. What was funny is I was trying to find the post-game press conference, not the podium stuff or the interview on the field with Lanning. I was trying to find the post-game stuff, right? So I go to YouTube, I type in Dan Lanning post-game. It's not popping up for some reason. And I'm like, okay, Big Ten topic. Still not popping up.
Nothing
And I don't know
showing
what
up.
wasn't popping up, but every other press conference he's done popped up. And you know what was funny about that was while I was looking for that Lanning audio that we're going to play on the other side, I saw a screenshot of his Idaho post-game. Go look at the still image of his face. It's like, oh my God.
What happened?
I can't believe that's how we play.
What the hell's going on here?
It's just fascinating to go back to the moment of how you felt after they narrowly beat Idaho.
Yes.
And seeing the post-game still image of his face after saying, we're mighty different, right? In the Big Ten Media Day, and where they ended up being at 13-0 and beating Penn State.